my attitude about it. Again, I just reiterate that if CRS needed money, this group would be here in a heartbeat to give it to them.
I don't know how, if Kristen actually has that answer about municipalities funding rescue, but I would probably go one step further and say, you know, what municipality funds rescue that has no say in the operations of that rescue?
I mean, we don't have a say in any of these businesses that we give money to, though.
But I think, you know, Luke brings up a good point. You know, I remember a meeting where we were having each organization kind of come in and do a presentation. You know, we got to a lot of these, but CRS was not one of them.
They did a presentation.
Did they?
In December, I think.
In December? Well, maybe I was on vacation.
Imagine that.
It's quite possible. Anyway, okay.
Could we simply, I'm more than happy to continue this conversation, but I would like to do it with the full knowledge of what the CRS reserve funds are.
Yeah, we could ask for them.
I think that's a legitimate ask.
And Emily, do you think, like, you're saying that 18,900, like, is it worth it? But is it worth it, I mean, like, to them also? Is it, you know, like, knowing what their operational funding is? Do you know what I mean?
Well, yeah.
Like, is it going to be detrimental and?
They're not gonna go under, no. That, absolutely not. I just don't think, and I struggle to say this because I support, you know, the Maryland Theater and I support the library, and these are all very necessary functions, but EMS is the most necessary function. Of course.
The difference is, the other folks are coming in and showing us their monetary needs, okay? And again, like I said, I'm more than happy to continue this conversation if we come in and see what CRS's reserve funds are, and we look at that and say, you know what, we see what it's contributed for, we see what the amount is, I have no trouble having that discussion. But I think we need to at least know that issue. We know what accounting is for us and what the reserve fund should be. Let's see what the reserve funds are, and then we can make the decision.
And the library doesn't bill their patrons.
The library what?
Doesn't
Bill their patrons.
CRS doesn't.
Well,
watch
I
the calls
think
they're
we
running in Hagerstown either.
I'm sorry?
They also are not billing a lot of the calls that they run in Hagerstown, which is 83% of their calls because of our citizen base and insurance base. I mean, most calls that they're running don't have private insurance either, so they are losing a significant amount of money with the issues we're having in the opioid crisis and everything else.
All right, moving on, Michelle.
We'll get some additional information and bring the chart back. So next thing we thought that we would look at is one that's been mentioned before, and it's the concept of a utility tax and a different tax tier for the utility group. Just as a reminder, the state assessor's office defines who and what is an actual utility tax company. And the tax that is applicable is not real estate, but instead it is corporate personal property tax. So when a municipality doesn't have anything else recorded or doesn't set a specific rate, the corporate personal property tax rate is 2.5 times your real estate piece. So we did a quick chart, and there's a lot of information on this chart. First, out of all of our tax customers, a total of 27 are defined currently right now by the state assessor's office as a utility tax company. We've included a column for fiscal year 19 assessed values, and then the fiscal year 19 tax rate, and the corporate personal property tax rate is $2.505 for every $100 of assessed value. So basically, our total corporate personal property tax rate is about 2.7 to 2.8 million. These 27 companies account for about 1.05, 1.1, so a little bit less than half. If we looked at changing and making that a different tier so that we generate additional dollars, to get about another $154,000, which would be approximately a 15% increase over the current rate, we would have to increase by 36.5 cents per $100. If we were looking to generate an additional $245,000, we would have to increase by 58 cents, which is 23% increase over the current rate. And finally, if we were trying to get closer to 290 to 300,000, we would need to increase it to 70 cents per $100 of assessed values. So again, I don't know that we were necessarily coming this evening to look for specific answers, but it's definitely a topic. It's an area in which we have authority as a municipality to make changes, and what those changes look like and how it can help us in the future, especially because one of the things we definitely want to look at is our financial projection section.
Couple of things. The city owns its water and sewer and electric utility infrastructure.
Correct.
All three of those utilities pay some form of a
Payment
pilot,
in lieu of taxes, correct.
which, if the water and sewer and electric within the city of Hagerstown were privately owned the way that these other utilities are, you wouldn't pay a pilot, you'd pay a tax, right?
Correct.
We have the ability to figure out what the assessed valuation of our utilities are generally, and then compare what percentage of pilot it's contributing to the city. I mean, you could do that calculation.
Correct.
I would venture that it would be one of the largest numbers, if not the largest number on this piece of paper.
It would be the largest.
And
Right.
actually, we do
So-
have that detail further back in the budget book, in the financial projection section. So out of the 2.7 million in pilot, almost 2 million is from electric, water, and wastewater combined.
And the other 700,000 is from,
The Hagerstown Housing Authority, Bethel Gardens, Liberty Property, and then C.W. Brooks is
so
separately, but it's still Hagerstown Housing
So I
Authority.
think it's important to point out, when you look at this chart of 27 private providers of utilities, which are just like us as public providers of utilities, we are by far the highest taxpayer to the general fund of the utilities. Almost, in fact, we pay we pay about double, right? We pay about double what the other 27 combined pay that are private utilities.
Correct.
So I think it's just important to understand that number right out of the gate. The second point that I want to make in considering this is, if you look at how the state assesses those utilities, state of Maryland assesses it based on the assessed value of the entity and the piece of that entity that exists within your jurisdiction. To put it in simplest terms, when you apply that business personal property rate to that assessed value, you're applying it to the personal property value of that assessment. So you're not applying an actual property tax rate, because you don't apply both in the state of Maryland to utilities, you only apply one or the other. I would assume that for our utilities, when we look at that pilot, we apply it to both, because we apply it to the total assessed valuation of that entity as it exists within the corporate boundaries of the city. So in the case of these utilities, and a large part of that argument is because you can't define the space that each of these utilities physically takes up. And what I'm saying is, there is clearly, if you wanted to do a calculation, you could clearly come up with the amount of physical space that each utility takes up. And you're not collecting a tax at this point on that component, unlike how you do for a private retail entity like a McDonald's. McDonald's, you tax the property, and you tax the business personal property. For utilities, you're not doing that right now. It's just that. And if you look at the other 157 municipalities across the state that have applied utility tax rates, you'll see that there are any number of them that recognize this and adjust their rates for utilities specifically accordingly, and make them higher and different than just the business personal property tax rate of that jurisdiction or just the property tax rate. So all I'm saying is, when you look at this 15%, 23% and 28%, your number should really be your property and your business personal property, which is about 75% higher than the highest number that staff's given you here at the 28%. So you're not even near that number. So that's the second point that I would make. And the last is this: when I thought about the idea of how do we get to that $1 million last year for economic development incentive, I said at that time, and I say it again now, we looked at the rate as it applied to commercial properties. We looked at the adjustment of the rate as it applied to apartments, multifamily. We looked at the rate as it applied to property owners. The one sort of owner of property within the city that would also stand to benefit from the lifting of assessments in our community is the utilities. I think that broadband, or Antietam Cable Broadband said it best when they said it's hard to operate successfully if your ratepayers, if a significant amount of your customer base isn't paying or isn't there to pay. And part and parcel to this economic redevelopment is to build that base and build the occupancy of these properties, build the success of your properties in the city to raise that base. And I don't see the utilities, they shouldn't be sort of set outside of carrying at least some component of that burden. And if the rest are getting us around $850,000 in new revenue,
A little bit less,
813, I think it was 813, right? All I'm saying is, you could get to that $1 million, and I said this last year, you could get to that $1 million by adjusting this rate just by 15 to 18% overall, and make up that difference. And the utilities are definitely going to benefit from that $1 million that you're going to invest every year in getting $5 million of private investment in return for that $1 million in public investment that you create. And so that, I think, would be the argument of why I would continue to believe that you would make those adjustments just on those 3 points.
Any other discussion right now?
I got some information to digest.
Say that one more time.
That's some information to digest.
Okay. So aside from utility tax here, one of the other things that, before we really look in section 6, which is our 5-year projections, one of the things I think that is most instrumental and important for us to not lose track of is that in the fiscal year 20 budget in the general fund, there were several what I would call one-time revenue sources, things that we do not anticipate, or nor can we continue to anticipate will continue to happen. The first of which is we did go ahead and reappropriate $818,000 from a fiscal year 18 surplus. Typically, the city doesn't see $1 million surplus in the general fund on a yearly basis, nor would we want to dip below our general fund retained earnings policy. $818,000, basically, again, just a reminder that right now each penny on the real estate generates $263,000. And that's if we get the growth of 1.5%. One of the other things hand in hand with that is we are transferring surplus back from the health insurance fund, and that's about $580,000 in the general fund. So just those two combined, a little over 1.3 million, would be 5.3 cents real estate. So if we had no other options and we didn't make other cuts and we did not have this revenue source, the only other way really to get to that would be an increase.
And would hire about 10 police officers and increase the starting wages for those police officers, right?
And then last but not least, in our capital improvements program, we also had some fund balance that we were able to reappropriate and utilize of about 305,000. So in total, about 1.7 million in the general fund. It's really one-time revenue sources that help balance the budget. And when you look at 1.7 million, if it's 263,000 per penny, that would be the equivalent to about 6.5 cents. So that being said, 1.7 million in one-time revenue. If we turn to it's section 6.
And may I suggest, when you say that to us, that if we really allow all that to sink in, including what I said about police officers, which everybody's clamoring for, you know, at some stage of the game, the message is going to have to be sent out to the people that we have been giving $250,000 to on a regular basis, that money may not be there.
So if we look in section 6 on page 3, so again, 1.7 is what I'm saying that we really utilized in the fiscal year 20 proposed budget. In the 5-year financial projection section, tongue twister. We have 2 years worth of history instead of 1. Then we have fiscal year 19 budget, followed by where we think we're going to end fiscal year 19 on June 30, followed by fiscal year 20 proposed budget. And so as you look across fiscal year 20 proposed budget towards the bottom, we have this needed revenue source. It's where we have it, it's on the first page, it's so that we see it, we footnote it. We either need to increase revenue or decrease expense, because everything is a scale, it's balanced. So either in fiscal year 21, based on where the current revenue trends are, with some inflationary factors, with hoping that we increase in the property taxes close to 3%, because we're going to go through another triennial assessment period, we would need about $2 million more in revenue over what we're looking at right now based on current revenue streams. So again, we need at 1.7 really in fiscal year 20. Fiscal year 21, we're looking at needing 2 million. So it's growing, and that's because our revenue stream in our out-year projections is not growing at the same pace as our expenses are growing. If we flip the page to page 4, there's a breakdown of our expenses, same time periods, just a little bit more information. And actually, right now in the fiscal year 20 proposed budget, we're looking at about $1,400, so a little bit more than break even. And I think one of the pages that I really want to focus our attention to is on page 9. And this is just where we start doing a little bit more detailed breakdown on salaries and wages and benefits for a 5-year period, so that you can see a little bit more detail on the salaries. In fiscal year 20 proposed budget, base salaries alone are at a total of $19.5 million. Within that 19.5 is all of our funded and approved positions. Now, we're sitting here at budget time. We know we are not going to go the entire year in fiscal year 20 with every single full-time approved position filled for all 12 months. So based on where we're at in fiscal year 19 and anticipating how long it takes to hire and recruit new people, we have a budget savings of $425,000, and again, that's across all of the general fund.
In 19,
In 20.
okay.
320,000 of that's in the police department, and that's because by far and large, right now, the largest vacancies that we're seeing right now today is in the general fund and is in that department.
Even if that wasn't the area in which was producing the highest number of vacancies in total, you would be hard pressed to find another department within city government that would come close to producing the share of that number anyway. I mean, your police department makes up a little over $12 million worth of your
Salary.
total salary, or roughly 50%.
Right.
So, I mean, you'd be hard pressed to find another department that's going to generate that volume of unspent funds. I mean, your entire engineering department would pretty much have to go, personless for half a year to even get close to, matching, that number.
Right.
I just don't want, I'm looking at the sort of news people over there, and you can, you latch onto that, well, it's because the police department is short of people, but,
But we don't.
I mean, the lion's share is there because they make up the lion's share of your total overall wage and benefit scale.
And so when we sat down and we're looking at this number, realistically, I sat there and I looked, okay, how many full-time positions are approved? So for police, sworn count is 112. Realistically, say to human resources, I say to the Hagerstown Police Department, realistically, when was the last time we've actually had 112 full-time sworn count? And
I
the
don't
answer
think we
is we
ever
haven't.
No.
And the last time that we were close, how long did we sustain it? And we didn't sustain that for 6 months. So why budget dollars at 112 full-time count for an entire 12 months when we haven't hit that number in over 10 years?
But if we don't do that, aren't we saying to the police department, forget about trying to get to your
No.
number?
No, because the positions are still funded. So as long as the positions are funded, they can continue to recruit and fill. And at the point that this number goes down, it's going to be offset hopefully in the overtime budget. I mean, so why give a department a huge amount of dollars in the budget that realistically isn't going to be spent in the full-time where it was originally budgeted? Plus increase their overtime. The overtime wages are increased again. So we have had the luxury and have been able to, in the past, and this is no different than fiscal year 19 budget. In fiscal year 19, we budgeted $350,000 across the entire general fund. And again, the majority of where that has happened is in HPD. So every single year, we budget and know that of all of our full-time funded positions, realistically, I don't know any employer right now who can say, all of my positions that are approved are always, always, always funded for the entire year. So this number, to put it in perspective, a starting salary at HPD with benefits, and I'll base the benefits on how much of percent. So the top half of the spreadsheet that we're looking at has total salaries and wages. The bottom half has benefits. When you take benefits as a total and apply it to the wages, currently in fiscal year 20 proposed budget, benefits are 48% of salaries and wages. So a starting position in the police department would be about a little over $59,000. So we're saying 320 for a year, that's 5 full-time positions. If you look at right now, when I went into our financial system and I looked at the officers that are currently here, an account that we currently got, and the average pay of those people, because we're not always, when people leave, it isn't always somebody who's only been here for 6 months or a year. It's people who have been here 3 years, 5 years, 7 years. So on average, again, counting benefits, on average right now, it's a little over $78,000. That's not quite 4 positions for the whole year. So 112 minus 4 is 108. And if at any point, they've already have this in writing, if at any point they get to 112 for the entire year, which would be great, we will find another way in which to offset it. We are not reducing their count. We are not saying they can't fill those positions. We're just trying to make the budget reflect more accurate numbers, and it's nothing that we haven't done. We have done this historically. I assure you, 10 years before I've been here, and we've done it at least 9 since I've been here. So again, this page provides a lot of good information. Base wages are at the top, 19.5 across the entire general fund. You'll see 1.1 million in overtime. The majority of that is in public safety. So total wages of 20.6 million. And then on the bottom half, we have benefits. You'll see total for active employees is at 8.3, plus another 1.5 million for retiree health and dental insurance, for a total benefit in the general fund of 9.8 million. So when we look at, and we can turn the page or we can stay here, when we talk about health insurance for active employees as well as for retirees in the general fund, and when we add in our utility group, like electric, water, wastewater, golf, I think that's 1 or 2. Parking has 1 full-time. We pay $9.9 million is what's in the citywide budget for just health and dental for active employees plus retirees for the next fiscal year.
I mean, I appreciate the information.
Just information.
I know in the back of my head, I'm like, well, we have contracts that obligate us to that. We have a healthcare committee that obligates us to those things, so,
Correct.
you know, the bulk of that financial information is an immovable object. It just is. And it becomes an immovable object every time you enter into agreements to abide by those obligations. So,
And while I agree with what you're saying, Kristen, let's also have a clear recognition that some of our contracts are still not paying enough money. Some of our contracts are driven by the market, police being the primary example. We can complain all day long, but what has happened with our police department is the contracts can't keep up with the demand. So we enter into a contract in year 1, which looks like we can be competitive and do hires, and say the contract lasts for 3 years. By year 3, our pay scale is so low that we can't recruit new people. So it's not that way with all the bargaining units, I will certainly agree, but when you mention police being the number 1, you know, I can't really look at the bargaining unit of HPD and say, you bargaining unit, if it weren't for you, we wouldn't have all these darn expenses with regards to our police. Because the fact is, it's probably the bargaining unit that's keeping us from having a higher budget for the police right now. Because I think if we had our druthers, we would immediately increase the starting salary of police officers. But we can't do it, because
But I
we're
don't-
bound contractually not to do it.
but those aren't the things, and that's the part that frustrates me, because I feel like at each iteration comes in, and let's just take that bargaining unit as an example. We're informed of what their representation believes we should do to best accommodate the needs of that organization. And we say,
Versus the
okay.
needs of this one.
And they say, and we say, okay, we hear you loud and clear that you need to up you need to do something about the 4th year through the 8th year people. We got you, we hear you, let's do it. And we put it in writing, we say, okay, and we do it. And then 2 years later, it's, well, that's not the issue now. The issue is, what you really needed to do was do something about the 1 through 3 year people. And we say, oh, well, that isn't what we were, encouraged to come to the table to accomplish. And it's even more frustrating, and I read the article, that with Carol's comments in it, I don't know what day it came out.
Sunday.
And I'm sitting there and I'm reading it, and I'm like, well, I just got a report from administration that says, that pay isn't the single specific issue. that officers have, other reasons. And I read the comments of, well, here's the item that you need to address, and I feel like, reversing the clock 4 years and going, wait a second, we said that was the issue at the time.
Correct.
And you said, no, the issue is the middle, you can't keep the people at the middle of the road. We said, no, we're trying to get the people at the beginning of the road. And so we said, okay, if you say it's the middle of the road, we'll that's how we'll structure it. And that's what
Christian
we
is
did.
absolutely correct.
And then you come
We
back
did
and 2
everything
years
we
later,
could.
and it's like, no, it's the beginning.
We did everything we could do
I
to
just-
raise the starting salary, and we were told no.
Right, that wasn't the issue that needed to be addressed. So we didn't.
Yep. All right.
So on page 10 of section 6, it's just a little bit more information, and this is specifically just looking at insurance costs as well as our pension plans and how much that cost is. So in the general fund for fiscal year 20 budget, when you look at health and dental for active employees, for retirees, when you look at how much is being paid to the state of Maryland pension plan plus our police and fire, it's at $7 million, which is fairly flat with our fiscal year 19 budget. The chart on the bottom, so when we say things like the state of Maryland pension plan, some often think that, it sets the employee rate and the employee rate only, but that's incorrect. So every single year, the state of Maryland puts out information. They mandate what the employee must contribute, and they mandate what we as a employer must contribute. That is actually increasing in the fiscal year 20 budget to 9.38%. I, as the city of Hagerstown, cannot elect for the employees in this plan to fund at a higher level than that. They're only going to, they will actually invoice me and we pay exactly, but we do 100% every single year of what we're required to pay. Our police and fire pension, we had talked about changes a little bit ago. We're leaving it at 14%, and then the employees there are at 8%. We don't have any other questions. I'm going to slip to capital improvement projects and cover as many as we have time to do and look at. So in section 7, our capital improvement project section of our budget book actually contains the capital projects for all of the funds. So the first couple pages is just information, higher city level. When we get to section 7, page 16, we're looking at all of the projects across the general fund, but it's broken out and sorted by funding source. This is one of my favorite charts. If you're looking here and you find an individual project under one specific funding source, it does not mean that that's the grand total for that project.
I'm sorry, what page are you on?
Page 16, I'm so sorry.
I'm like the bad kid in class.
It's all good.
Yes, you are.
So for the general fund, we're looking at bond, the very first category is bond financing. That bond financing there for fiscal year 20 is at $3 million. That does not include any of the projects that we're currently doing at $3 million. So again, this is anticipating that in fiscal year 20, we're going to have a need to do another bond issue, whether that's at the end of calendar 2019 or the beginning of calendar 20.
And I think it's important when you say that number, that you estimate the translation of what that number means to the operational side of the general fund budget, because I think that oftentimes folks will hear that and they'll go, well, you said you're not gonna fund, these thousands of dollars that this need, is out there that needs to be met, but you're gonna spend millions on these other items, and I don't think that translation is often understood, that it isn't like you're spending $3 million in a single year, that it's a fraction of that over time.
We're getting a loan or a mortgage, we're issuing bonds. So we're getting $3 million, we're paying for our projects, we're gonna pay back a little bit over time. In section 6, I was trying to make up a little bit of time so we covered these projects, so I actually skipped the debt page, which that information is on, but in section 6, on page 12, that $3 million, we were anticipating about 4.5% over 20 years. If we only, again, if we do not issue until the end of calendar 2019 or the very beginning of calendar 2020, in fiscal year 20's budget, we would only have one interest payment. So we're looking at about $37,000 in fiscal year 20 that we would be paying towards that $3 million. But then in fiscal year 21, it would be about a little 225 grand. The other thing that we have done that kind of goes along with that, so on page 16, under the bond financing section, it literally lists the individual projects. So the very first one, for instance, says fire department vehicles, and it has a project number, the C0010. I want to flip us back to page 49. Because once you get past the initial charts and the summary information, it actually starts individual detail sheets on every single project, and they're in numerical order. So if we go and we look specifically at the fire department vehicle replacement, there is a section on all of these projects where we have towards the bottom where it says there's a place for description, justification, and then a little box that has budget impact. One of the things that Jennifer and Jeff spent a lot of time on was making sure that we go back and include numbers here so you can see, based on a 20-year term at 4.5%, we're anticipating future fiscal year 20 bond issue of $688,000, and the annual debt service on that, once we get paying 2 interest payments plus principal, would be $52,000. So we try to give that information in
Rated
a
in
handful
for
of
what?
places.
4.5?
Yes. So we try to give the information at a higher summary level when we look at just the debt overall, and we look at the big lump numbers. But then we also try to break it down on the individual projects, because sometimes people say, yeah, okay, so that's not much dollars, but what if we don't do that project? What is that specific impact? So we try to include it in 2 different places, because people look in different places. Again, on page 16, there's a section that says CIP, and it says general fund balance reserve. You're going to see the $818,000 there. That's everything that we're reappropriating for general fund balance reserves. Again, the projects are listed, but then when we go to the individual project pages, you can see what we're recommending at this point utilizing fund balance reserves for. There's one right underneath it that says CIP fund balance. Of that CIP fund balance, there's $742,000. 305 of that is unrestricted, meaning it's from prior year projects that didn't have a restricted funding source. The other categories in here, so when we look at things like towards the very bottom of page 16, it says cable peg, $224,000. The monies that we get from Antietam towards our PEG fees, we put it in this project. We can never utilize it for anything else. So we have to, whatever the accumulation is and the balances from prior years that we haven't used, we have to always ensure it goes right back in there. It's a restricted funding source specifically for that. We do the same thing with pavement preservation and some of the other things we do highway user money with. If we look at page 25 through page 27, it's going to be the same things. It's going to be still general fund, it's going to be general fund projects, but the projects here, instead of being broken down and seeing information by funding source, you're going to see it at a higher level glimpse, broken down by the individual departments or areas. So like engineering, fire, information technology. But really, most importantly, I think this year we just wanted to point it out. At the bottom of page 26, you're going to see stormwater. Again, we do not have a separate fund for stormwater, but what we have done with the assistance of both Rodney Tissue and Eric Dykey was we went through all the individual projects that we have reflected for the next 5 years, and we've done our best to identify what items we feel would be eligible for stormwater fee and what a stormwater fee could help pay towards. And so we've labeled them as their own department to help us as we're moving forwards with this phase 2 portion that's getting ready to go underway. So again, you can see what they are, what those project numbers are. And we might have time to do one or two quick projects. So first and foremost, and I don't know if we really need Scott or not, but we'll start with the general fund, and we'll hit just a couple of them. The computer equipment and software is on page 47, and the reason that we wanted to make sure we mentioned and looked at the computer equipment and software and what makes up the information in this project on page 47 is that in fiscal year 20, we, and Scott is better able to describe it, but we basically are at a point where we need to upgrade our technology. We haven't touched that infrastructure in so long, and so we know that our servers are in desperate need of an upgrade. So it's $295,000. It's more typically than what we have included in this project. The other thing that we did was through goals and priorities and some other things that are occurring, a need to automate through our phone this whole pay by phone concept instead of having to wait through a switchboard and wait for somebody to pick up. And the ref prices that we received when Scott reached out to get some information was about $85,000, and we felt that it was enough of a priority that we left it in fiscal year 20 budget and utilized fund balance reserves, because it's one of those things we're going to do one time, but it's going to be a big impact, not just to the customers in the general fund, but all of the customers as well as the staff need. Scott, did you have anything specific you wanted to add? If you're good, we're good.
I mean, I'm good.
Unless anybody had any. If you have something specific.
We haven't upgraded most of our networking equipment since 2005, maybe, and we've reached obsolescence 5 years ago. And we've just managed to nurse them along to the point where it's dangerous to nurse them any further.
And I think we'll do one more and then we'll call it quits for this evening on budget review and pick up next week with the rest of these projects and start on CDBG and economic redevelopment. But on page 51, we have our municipal stadium improvements. And I think one of the reasons that we wanted to make sure, at least I did, that we touched upon this is, again, there's been a lot of conversations and discussions, and so I don't want to say that the budget happens in a vacuum, but I have to say, okay, departments, December and January, that's it. You cannot keep changing numbers on us because we have to get to a place where we can balance. Once we're balanced, we have to get to a place where we can get all the documentation printed. So at that point, conversations have still continued to evolve and will continue to happen, but in our fiscal year 20 budget, conversations were not occurring at that point yet about a new stadium being either renovated and or built to have it included in fiscal year 20 budget. So what is included is the remaining term that we have with the Hagerstown Suns, which the rent that they provide to us on an annual basis is $35,000, with the understanding that that $35,000 will be utilized on capital improvement areas within municipal stadium for that year. So that's what's included in the fiscal year 20 budget at this point.
I believe we agreed to the capital improvements already, right, Rodney? For next season?
For fiscal year 20?
Yeah.
And we'll stop there. It's a good stopping point, and we'll pick up next week with the rest of the items on this sheet, as well as starting to discuss CDBG budget and economic redevelopment. We will make sure that we get information, additional information regarding CRS, and we'll make sure we put that back on the calendar to relook at agency contributions.
Thank you.
Thanks, Michelle. Thanks.
All right, it seems that our next guests have arrived. Next on the agenda is a legislative update from Delegate Quarterman, Senator Serafini.
Oh, it's good seeing you.
I shake everybody's hand, but I'm not walking.
No, don't walk all around this table, Andy.
I'll throw you a kiss, Andy.
Thank you. That would probably go far. This is Sam Wallace, is my legislative aide from Annapolis. He's been working for me the last 5 years. Sam is leaving June 1st to Officer Candidate School for the Marines, so very proud of him. He's been a troublemaker since he was a kid. He was an Eagle Scout, of course, and he took rhetoric at University of Maryland. I'm still trying to figure out what that was, undergrad, and public policy master's. But he's leaving me, so any smartness I ever had is going out the door June 1st.
You're in trouble next year,
Yes.
right?
But we'll sleep better knowing that he's an officer with the Marines. So I asked you all if we could come, so I appreciate, I guess we'll say Mr. Spiker officially accommodating us. And then I sweetened the pot by bringing the delegate with me, so.
That's the only reason you got in.
Exactly. Well, I had to take Weibel with me to get in front of the county commissioner, so I know how it works. So.
Good thing you asked first before you sweeten the pot.
Yes, that's true. Well, he said yes before he knew who was
Exactly.
So go ahead.
So, all right, well, as the senator said, thank you for having us here today. It's great to be back here and see everyone. And we just wanted to go over a few things from the session, and then most importantly, talk to you guys to see what and how we can assist you guys, moving forward. A couple things here just personally for myself. Going down, this was my second session. As you guys all recall, I was with you guys not too long ago. And then after the election, I was fortunate enough to go back for a full term here now. So a couple bills of interest that I sponsored. I know that one, I spoke with all you guys at some point at the beginning of the session, was our inmate release bill. Had a good presentation there. I appreciate the mayor was able to come down, some other folks, the police chief and sheriff, state's attorney. We had a real good presentation. Unfortunately, the bill did not move. However, small victory, they did not kill the bill either. So we plan to bring it back again next year, probably tweak it a little bit, as most of these things are. If not first succeed, try again. So I've already talked to Sheriff Mullendore and Chief Kiefer about a couple of things that we think that we might be able to change to make it more palpable, so to speak, to some of our friends in Annapolis. The marriage ceremony bill, you probably saw a few things about that, which is a local bill with our Historical Society. They had reached out to us in regards to seeing if we could divert some of the marriage fee to their general fund, so to speak. It's something actually the director found out. There's about 10 other counties that were doing the same thing, so it was not really too hard of an ask, and the fiscal impact is about $4,000, so it wasn't of great concern to the state, but helps the Historical Society out nonetheless. Locally, as far as some capital things, money, things like that, Senator Serafini and I were both successful together as a team effort to get some money for the local YMCA, about $150,000. Robert Johnson Community Center downtown, they had a bond bill previously under Brett Wilson. I don't know if you knew about this one or not, but they, as we all know, there's been some things that have changed over the years at the Johnson Community Center. They had not utilized their funds by the time period they were supposed to. So fortunately, I was able to be appointed to the Appropriations Committee this year, and that came in handy because we were able to get them an extension. They have a 2-year extension now on a $50,000 grant from the state for the Robert Johnson Community Center. The other things here, as far as locally, being on the appropriations, I served on the Public Safety Administration Subcommittee. A lot of different, basically every state agency comes through there. Specifically locally, Judiciary came through there. There was an ask from Washington County to add a 6th Circuit Court judge. We've been asking for it for a long time. Department of Legislative Services actually recommended not funding that position, but we were able to get the funding for that. And you may be aware, obviously already, I believe that they've already started construction down there on that courtroom. So we will have another judge here coming soon to Washington County. And then lastly, I think I reached out to all of you. I know I reached out to all of you and spoke to most of you. The state was kind enough to provide us some funding. If you guys should choose, obviously that discussion will happen at another point, for a potential stadium project within the city of Hagerstown. So the state allocated $300,000 for that second phase. Again, we'll touch base on that, once the stadium authority comes through and you guys are able to discuss that. And whatever direction you guys decide to choose, that'll be the direction that it goes. My understanding is they were supposed to meet, I believe, this month, but I think they got pushed back to
May
the next
7th.
month. Okay. And so, we'll see how all that goes there. Obviously, the urban improvement project downtown has been ongoing, and we're all well aware of that. There was additional funding that was added for that again this year, and I think we're all excited to see in October when the theater is completed. I'm not sure the timeline specifically. Do you know on the Barbara Ingram School what the timeline on that is? I know they start a little bit later, but I think we're all excited to see once that project comes to fruition and everything, all of the benefits that we'll get from there. So there's just a couple things here, just locally. I mean, more than happy to discuss any statewide bills if you have any questions or anything like that. The most important thing to me, and I know to Senator Serafini that we talked briefly before we came in, is really how can we help the city of Hagerstown? What can we do in our position to better the city of Hagerstown? I know Councilwoman Keller, you and I spoke about a few initiatives right at the beginning of the session. We looked into one of them that, actually we looked into both of them. One of them that the information was already there. The second one, we're still waiting on that information. But I would like to continue that dialogue, and hopefully over the summer, if there are things we want to move forward with, we can get those nailed down, because this is really the time. The session doesn't start obviously till January, but we really need to have a general idea, whether it's bills, capital, whatever we're looking for, by the end of the summer. Because, by the fall, everyone's getting their requests and getting things lined up. And once the session starts, I mean, it's a race, so to speak. And that was part of, with our inmate bill, I had requested an opinion from the Attorney General, which took 2 months to get, and I literally got it the day before the deadline to submit a bill to get a guaranteed date was for a hearing. So once the session actually starts, if you don't have already in order what you're going to be doing, you're a little bit behind. So I'd like to continue those discussions. And again, most important thing to me is what can we do to help the city of Hagerstown and work together, going forward. So anything else the senator obviously wants to add?
Sure. So I'll go over this with you just briefly, and then if you guys have questions for either of us. So Paul did touch on a couple of these. Highway user revenues did increase, so you can see there's a $2.42 million, $477 for the area. You guys get most, but not all of that. Some of that goes the other. HCC obviously got nice funding, which is nice. USMH is bringing the hospitality. That's coming. I know some of you have talked to Greg Snook. They were a little late in signing the contract, USMH was, of the system, so he hopes to have that running in the fall. We hope that's going to bring more. We pushed for some legislation. Frostburg's doing the nurse practitioner with a psych focus, which would help Brookline with staffing, Emeritus, and all the other opioid issues that we have. They're turning people away, not because they don't have beds, they don't have practitioners. So we're going to see if we can't roll that down here. We know the Physician's Assistance Program is coming up. For us to drive students to your downtown, we think is a major impact. They have the resident program already that's up at Walnut Street with the physician's assistant coming up there. Those are people, I mean, my nephew just got married. He's at the one at Butler out in Indiana. These are people with families and stuff. They're going to look for housing. They're going to be here. The residency program that was originally through West Virginia and now has some University of Maryland docs coming to do residency that Meredith is doing. Those are going to bring people that maybe will live in the downtown. That's the kind of folks that we want. I hope we can still talk about how we can bring the PIA students down there. We still know there was thoughts of bringing other students down there. I think that's one of the options for us of multiple things of bringing people down. But these aren't the Barbara Ingram High School students. These are post-graduate students doing work that are going to have families and maybe looking for a place. And if we can encourage them, they're going to be here for a couple years to establish residency here. Maybe, we're underserved for a lot of practices for medicine and stuff like that. So that's a big thing. Work-ready community, $200,000 is our start, but we hope to do more for that. I think that's, once again, going to attract people to come into our community. Hopefully they'll come into the core. Hopefully they'll look for opportunities inside the core. As Paul said, the UIP next year gets the 2.5 and then 2.5, and that's in the budget. There's no question about it. We feel very good about that should be there. Once again, ARC is a big thing. They got a $4 million project. We were able to get them $500,000 this year. We're looking for another as much as 1.5 from the state for them. They have some of the funds for the rest of that. And as I said, Paul mentioned some of this. Some of these other just some bills that may or may not, be of interest to you. The last thing that I've given you here has nothing to do with directly, but I always find it's amazing when people ask me to help them with their Social Security benefits. I actually had somebody ask my wife to help them get tickets to the Obama inauguration, and I said, I'm a state-level person and I'm in the wrong party, but other than that, I'll try to help you. So you're going to get people that are retirees, state employees saying, hey, they're changing my benefits, what do I do? I only give this to you so you see it's an overview, but understand, we're having a meeting tomorrow for a certain group, and we're going to do one at HCC later, just because people complain to you because you're an elected official. All you need to know is this. Number one, there will be absolutely no changes till January 1st of 2021. So nobody's going to change anything until then at the earliest, and we're going to have all kinds of education. So I'm only saying, because they're talking to every elected official they can, just please let them know. The other thing that Paul and I talked about, too, we did have some conversation with Chief Kiefer. You used to get police aid at a higher dollar amount than you're currently getting, and the state budget. That we have to work to restore. There is federal money that comes through the Governor's Office of Crime Control and Prevention. We talked about some additional grants for those community officer programs and stuff like that. So we read the article in the paper the other day. We talked to Chief Kiefer. You know, good, bad out of the article. It is true that he needs some more people, but guess what? That's not just here. Maryland State Police are under staff. Certainly the correctional institutions are. We're having trouble recruiting people to come into this field. So we need to do everything we can, and we want to partner with you along that. We think you've made a great choice in your chief. He's been a tremendous asset as we work. But as there's federal money and grant, we're going to the state to say, what can you do? They got one for community officer, but we're going to look and see what we can do to come alongside and help funding for you all. Because, you know, frankly, for you all to say we're going to be able to step up and do and compete with, you know, Frederick County's killing us for a lot of places. You know, you're seeing transfers from MSP to Frederick County. You never saw that back in the day. So as you're competing for talent, we want to help you do that. So that's one of our commitments. Obviously, Jill's working on opportunities and she's doing a great job. You should know that's a major focus. And it's a major focus for inner city places like Baltimore City and frankly like Hagerstown. And I've always said to us, we mirror some of their challenges and issues. And so as we can pilot programs and as we can do some unique things, and the movement of the legislature was, there's great federal programs. If you buy a property and you go 10 years, all of a sudden you don't pay tax on it. That's amazing. But that's not going to bring jobs in there. That's not going to bring housing. So Senator Ferguson really is from Baltimore City has led the initiative on some of the legislation that says, what can we do to incent jobs? And the governor did the same thing. So more jobs for Marylanders was all manufacturing within opportunity zones will say, we're going to give you a 5.75% credit against wages that you pay to create jobs in an opportunity zone, and it can be for any occupation. It doesn't have to be manufacturing. So the idea is opportunity zones could bring in big money from investment firms and stuff like that. But what we want to do is say, can you bring jobs in there? And then there's going to be some other incentives. Can you improve the housing opportunities? So those would be some things that are in addition to what, you know, you have, Jill and others looking at those. Great. But we want to incent that even further. So I think that's the issue. We're working on some stuff on Potomac Center. There'll be some news out of that. And I think Paul and I have worked on that. We're excited for that. We'll keep you informed as that moves forward. The last thing is same thing. We want to help you. Everything we've done for the UIP with the county and the state and everybody coming alongside of you is great. We love that the private enterprises come in. The governor tells that story everywhere, that we've had a lot of private investment in that, and it's been a true partnership. We're here to do that. But we want your help too with us to say we're open for business. Anything that's an obstruction, you know, I always respond when people start complaining. We had a problem, frankly, down at the Schmankerstude with a state agency, and they were messing things up. I don't know how else to say it. That's my job to do that. Same for you all. When you're getting feedback from somebody that is causing a problem for business to do business, we want to do things safely. We want to do things right. We want to build things, but we also want to say, hey, we want people that come to do business here or consider here to love it. And that's the ask I'm going to have for you guys. Help us build that. If you're having a problem with a state agency, let me know, so I can light that up and get things going. You know, we got Kelly Schultz, which is a good friend of our community as Secretary of Commerce. She's up here a lot. She was at the HCC event. She wants to help us bring jobs here, do whatever she can. Certainly the governor's been here more than we've seen a governor in a long time. They want to see us succeed. And so if you have problems with the state, let us know. We'll do what we can. You need help for law or money, ask us. And Paul's right. We're putting the budget together for next year starting in a month or two. Capital budget will be pretty much solid by September, October. So don't come to us in January. Let us know now. And even if it's hey, I don't think this is a pie in the sky ask, but let's ask for it. Okay? All right. Sorry. That's probably more than I said I'd talk, Mike, but there you go.
It's all good, thank you.
Sure.
Any questions for Paul or the Senator?
I just want to thank you guys. You know, we've been doing this for a long time, and this is about as productive of government cooperation that I've seen in my history, both with the state delegation, county commissioners, the city, the board, and private investment. And it's thanks to you all for a whole lot of it. And hopefully President Hogan won't forget us.
Yeah.
Anybody else?
How do you answer that?
Now what?
And thank you for your time. Appreciate it. I know you've had a long day. and
Thank you
probably
guys
have a
very
long day.
much, yeah.
Thank you.
Anything we can do, that's.
Okay, well, we're recessed until 7 o'clock.
How fast can you stop?
Call this 69th regular session to order. Just so you know, I just used the gavel of the Eastern District Student Council President, who at the time, from 1974 to 1975, was Michael S. Spiker.
Okay.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
All right, the invocation will be given by Councilmember Louis Metzner, and for the pledge to the flag, we're going to ask Thomas Walsh from Troop 23 of Funkstown to please come up to the podium and lead us in the pledge. So, everybody stand, please. We're going to do the prayer first.
For the invocation tonight, I'd like to share some words of Mother Teresa. People are often unreasonable and self-centered. Forgive them anyway. If you are kind, people may accuse you of ulterior motives. Be kind anyway. If you are honest, people may cheat you. Be honest anyway. If you find happiness, people may be jealous. Be happy anyway. The good you do today may be forgotten tomorrow. Do good anyway. Give the world the best you have, and it may never be enough. Give your best anyway. For you see, in the end, it is between you and God. It was never between you and them anyway. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Thomas. All right, so quick announcements. We'll be following the rules of procedure adopted by this administration on December 20th, 2016. If you have a cell phone, please mute it. All correspondence or distribution to elected officials should be provided to the city clerk and should include a copy for the city clerk for inclusion in the official record. The meeting dates for May are as follows, because there's no meeting next Tuesday, although there will be a public meeting up at Elgin Station at 7 o'clock next Tuesday evening. Okay. Tuesday, May 7th is a work session from 4 p.m. The tax rate and budget public hearing is at 7 p.m. on the 7th. The 14th, a work session at 4. The 21st, a work session at 4. And the 28th is a regular session at 7 p.m. This evening, we have with us some guests, and come down there. We have some certificates of special recognition to hand out this evening. And if I could, I'm going to call you out. Please come up, and we're going to do all 5 of these, it looks like, at one time. 6 of these. There we go. Richard Hembrock. Please come forward. Deborah Klein, Rusty Baker, Kevin Poole, Jim Klein, and Les Bishop. All right, what we have here, we're honored to have those individuals of the Joint Veterans Council and others who created the Vietnam War Memorial on
181 South Walnut.
181 South Walnut Street. There we go. I knew Jim would know the guess. Anyway, first off, a heartfelt thank you from myself and all members of the council. It's a beautiful memorial that you constructed. A lot of hard work, a lot of time, and long overdue. So thank you very much. The certificate of special recognition, and I'm only going to read one, but I'll hand out the rest of them if I could. The Hagerstown Mayor and City Council would like to recognize and thank Jim Klein of the Joint Veterans Council of Washington County. Jim Klein, along with members of the Joint Veterans Council of Washington County, Maryland, determined there was a need to establish a Vietnam War Veterans Monument to honor the service members from Hagerstown and Washington County who lost their lives in the Vietnam War, to educate the public, garner support for, and recognize all men and women who served in the armed forces during the Vietnam era. The Hagerstown Mayor and City Council extend their sincere appreciation to Jim Klein for his time and dedication to planning, fundraising, and constructing this wonderful monument as a way to honor those who served and those who sacrificed. Sincerely, City Hagerstown, and signed by me. Jim, I think you yours first. Thank you very much. Deb? Thank you so much. Les? Kevin? Richard? Kevin? Last but certainly not least, my buddy, Rusty Baker, who came to my assistance anytime I ever needed him to put together his merry little band. Thank you.
First off, I want to thank the city, the mayor and the council for allowing us a piece of property to put this beautiful monument on. There's a couple other things we're going to do over at the monument. One of them is going to be some landscaping, and we're also going to be putting a couple sections of fencing just from the brick columns out and along the sidewalk. We also have a Liberty tree coming next month, which is a Great American Oak tree coming from the Department of Forestry, state of Maryland. We don't know how big it is, how little it is. You know, I'm hoping it'll be taller than I am, so the deer can't get to it, but regardless, we'll probably end up having to fence it in. I would like to hand out, if I could, what we gave the day of the dedication. We didn't have any idea on how many people we were going to have show up for the dedication. We had 300 programs printed up. They went 20 minutes probably before the ceremony. So we did get some new ones made. I'd like to give all the members here one, along with a special poker chip.
Did Heather Braun come hit you up for another one for me too?
No.
Okay.
If I allowed to.
You can, please, be my guest. Okay. Well, couldn't be so. Thank you, Jim. That's really appreciated. Anybody else want to say anything while you're up here?
I know it's a pleasure for me to be honored to be part of this. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, all of you.
Thank
We're going to
you.
get a picture. Council, anything from you?
Just one time we were all young, eh?
I know you don't remember.
I do want to say, there were over 500 people that came to this. They were still coming down Walnut Street when we started. We filled those 100 chairs that we had almost immediately. It was the largest crowd of veterans and their families that I have ever seen in this county.
On a rainy day.
On a rainy day. And they stayed there. They did not go out of the rain. They stayed there. That's what it meant to them. So I want to share that with you. You've done a great thing.
Well, I was lucky enough that Pine came out to work and personally invited me. And I explained to him that given the day, I wouldn't be able to get out of work to be there, but my heart was with them 100%. So, I'm sorry I missed it. Very happy that I got my program sheet.
We have nothing but good things to say about the city of Hagerstown in support of this monument, and all to be complimented in helping us attain this goal.
Rodney Tissue and his crew, yep, yes indeed.
Yes.
And the rain actually stopped right after the ceremony was over. And basically, I guess that's all the tears of the ones that wasn't able to make it to it. Tears of boys. And if you've noticed, it's rained every Friday since, so we may have Friday rain going out the rest of the year.
Anybody else? Don't walk away, we're gonna get a picture. All right. It's all down in the back.
Yeah, whenever I think of Vietnam, I don't think about old men. You know, just, no, when you grew up in that area, you just, yeah, yep.
Okay, 1, 2, 3. We're gonna go with the other camera. Okay, good smiles and 1, 2, 3. I'm gonna do one more. Okay, 1,
No,
2, 3.
I graduated
Okay.
high school in '70. And I had a high draft
One thing
number
we didn't
too.
announce at the dedication was the fact that, with some extra money that we had, we put 2 bullet cameras directly into the police department. And a lot of thanks goes to Detective Nick Varner, who installed that for us. And he actually put it all up there Monday before the ceremony in the rain in a bucket truck.
Thank you.
Take
Mike.
care.
Thank you, guys.
No, I don't think there were a lot of people joining voluntarily in the '70s. In the early '60s, it was different. People believed, yeah, that's what people believed different.
All right, citizen comments next, and we only have one person who signed up, and I know it's a group of people. Tom Rayford.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, everyone. Just a couple of things. There are some folks here that I do want to introduce. You know Dan Spedden. He is the president of the Hagerstown, Washington County Convention and Visitors Bureau. You might also know Rachel Nichols, who is the assistant to the Heart of the Civil War Heritage Area. And of those 3 counties in the Heritage Area, Washington County is the only county that has a dedicated assistant that helps with the grant programs. Also want to introduce the executive director of the Heart of the Civil War Heritage Area. That's Liz Chateau right there. 2 things I want to bring up. First of all, this is the week of Passover, and I want to say Happy Passover to those who observe and understand what that meaning is. And on May 5th, we have an unveiling of the Thomas Kennedy statue. It's an informal event with the full dedication expected to happen on October 11th. Tonight, I very much want to talk about the Heart of the Civil War Heritage Area. I've been involved as a board member since 2004, and I serve as president of the Heritage Area. I want to start by expressing thanks to the city of Hagerstown, which supported the Heart of the Civil War Heritage Area with $5,000 in fiscal year 2015. Now, after that year, the Hagerstown, Washington County CVB returned to a higher level of annual heritage support, so this organization has not had to approach the city of Hagerstown for funding since that time. However, the heart of the Civil War Heritage Area is now an independent nonprofit. And as we approach our 13th year as a certified heritage area, the cost of doing business has increased, but we must expand our sources of support. So we are looking to municipalities for support, starting with our two largest cities, Hagerstown and Frederick. Frederick has announced that it's made a commitment for fiscal year 2020. We anticipate an operating budget of the heritage area for fiscal year 2020 of $250,000. That does not include special projects or capital expenses. The breakdown of the revenue that supports the budget will vary slightly from year to year. Generally, it looks like this. 40% of the budget we get from the Maryland Heritage Areas Authority Management Grant, 35% from combined contributions from the tourism entities in the three counties, Washington, Carroll, and Frederick. 5% is raised through an annual appeal campaign, primarily the private sector support, although a few small municipalities voluntarily spend up to $200 in response to the campaign. 5% also comes from in-kind contributions that offset some operational costs. That adds up to 85%. 15% or $15,000 remains to be raised, and we look to Hagerstown and Frederick for leadership. Frederick has never received direct grant support from the heritage area, and yet the city of Frederick has committed $6,000 for fiscal year 20 and might make this a regular line item in the budget. We, of course, would be grateful for any support in future years that Hagerstown can provide. We believe that a contribution of up to $10,000 would certainly be welcome and appropriate, given the extent to which Hagerstown has gained financial benefit from all of the heritage area's annual programs. Well, what are they? Well, since fiscal year 2007, the city of Hagerstown has received direct grants amounting to $329,500 through the Maryland Heritage Areas Authority. The city and other nonprofits and government entities are eligible to compete for these grants only because they fall within the boundaries of the heart of the Civil War Heritage Area. Now, in addition to grants to the city of Hagerstown, Heritage Area grants have also supported other entities within the limits of Hagerstown, bringing the total amount of grant support that has benefited the city of Hagerstown and its entities to date of $521,340. Now, these grants have supported everything from streetscape enhancements, cataloging of the Dolman Museum collection, interpretive waysides, I think 52 of them, Phase 1 of the Cultural Trail, the refurbishment of the colonial-era Mount Etna Cannon at City Park, which will be rededicated on May the 4th. And in July, we will learn the outcome of the current Maryland Heritage Area Authority grant round, which could result in as much as $399,000 awarded to Hagerstown-based organizations, including $110,000 in grants that may be awarded to the city of Hagerstown for the next phase of the Cultural Trail and also for the Hager House. The funds that this organization brings to Hagerstown is impressive, and we need the city's help to continue to provide that benefit. Now, before I close, I want to note that the Maryland Heritage Areas Authority recently produced an economic study that examined as a slice of grant activity from recent years. Now, the study showed that each grant dollar leverages an additional $7.78 in additional investment, that each grant dollar stimulates $4.45 in return on investment. So the financial benefit of grants we make possible is far greater than the sum of the grant awards to the city and other Hagerstown-based organizations. Grants are compelling, but they're not the only service that the Heritage Area provides. We deliver technical assistance to nonprofits and government entities. We sponsor educational initiatives. We present workshops and a lot more. I hope you will consider providing generous support to the heart of the Civil War Heritage Area in upcoming fiscal years and beyond. So thank you very, very much for your time. Thank you. We all appreciate your help. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Anybody else wish to speak? Okay. He usually does. All right, no one else has signed up, so I open it up one more time to anybody who wishes to come to the podium and speak. Give your name and address. All right, seeing none, we'll move on to city administrator comments.
Thank you to all of my fellow employees, past and present, mayor and councils, past and present, for assisting me through my years here at the city. I appreciate it immensely. Many thanks to my wife, Nikki, and of course, Mom and Dad. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Mr. Elshire.
A couple of things. The first is, this appears it is your last meeting, if I'm not mistaken, in that chair. Couple of things. I think that I probably started in this chair about the time that you came onto the city. I think we lost 7 directors across the departments in the first year or two of office, and just wanted to say, you know, when Bruce decided not to re-up, and I just want to make folks aware, and you probably recall, you were the first person I came to and said, hey, you know, would you give consideration? And you gave me an affirmative no at that time. Just a firm no. And then obviously, you know, we went through the process in this last iteration and did not renew the contract with Valerie. I can tell you very flatly, I didn't come to you directly, but you're the first person I thought of, because you seemed to be the last person that wanted it for that interim period that we needed to figure out what we were going to do. And I can't stress enough how appreciative that I am as a council member that you made that decision. I think I speak for everyone here when I say it was a great decision that we made. And you certainly lived up to every expectation that I thought you would the first time I asked you to consider it. And I wish you well in your retirement endeavors, and thank you very much. The second item that I wanted to touch on, obviously there's an article about it in the paper. We've obviously had communication via email among the body in the last week, and I'm just going to be very plain about it. It's 335 Jonathan Street. It's one of the blighted structures that is slated for demolition. I believe we've approved a contract for the contractor to proceed with that. I understand weather conditions this weekend were not conducive to the work being conducted, but that's the decision this body made. In fact, a week ago, I believe our city administrator asked us twice, you know, is this a decision the body wants to commence with? This body said yes to the affirmative. And I want to point out a couple of things, you know, to folks in the comments that we've received and the conversations we've had since that time. The first is, I think I shared this with some members of mayor and council, but this is a list of blighted and vacant properties in the city that city planning office provided me about 4 or 5 years ago. And it isn't just one page, it's pages. There's about 90 properties on every page. In fact, this particular property is property number 187 on a page of about 1,200 of these properties that we have across this city. I'm firmly committed to removing that blight from this community. I think it only immediately improves the condition of our community. I think we found that out last week when you just read the comments of neighboring properties on Summit Avenue. I mean, that gentleman and his wife have had to stare at that piece of garbage on their street next to them in that neighborhood for 20 years that they've lived in this community. That's unacceptable. And now we have a property on Jonathan Street, like any other street in this community, and I've said it before, there's not a block in this town I couldn't find something that likely needs abated. It just is. That's a fact. You know, it's a fact of reality. And when I read for the first time today, and I apologize to staff, I know you put some time on this communication with the local newspaper, but I read for the first time today this Hagerstown demolishing 3 blighted properties. It's the first time I've read that article since it came out on April 14th, a week ago. And one of the things that caught my eye in that article was the city of Hagerstown issued an order for that property at 335 Jonathan Street to be demolished in July of 2008. I thought it was a typo when I read that today, and then I come to realize that's not a typo. we've been saying to the community that we're going to enforce our capability to remove that blight from this community for 11 years. And I just can't understand when we reach, not the 11th hour, this is like the last minute of the 11th hour, that we would suddenly place pause upon that decision that the majority of the body has clearly conveyed is the decision of the body to proceed with, and provide the opportunity for additional comment. I mean, it's been sitting that way for 20 years. We've known about it for at least 11 of those. We have a list to get through that'll take well beyond our lifetimes to stem the tide on, that we know about, that we document and dialogue. We've went through legal proceedings just in the last few years to be able to get to this point to actually start to forcibly remove some of this blight from our community. And to me, there is no street in this city that is any different than any other that has this condition that requires this attention. There is no building that, to me, is sacred and separate from being addressed when it becomes a blight on our community and needs that address to occur. And so, unless the direction from this body has changed from when we voted on the item, when we approved the contract to proceed, and when we reiterated that direction last week, that's the direction this body should be proceeding. And I know that there is communication that there are interested parties that apparently don't represent the property that plan to come and speak to this body about this particular item 2 weeks from now. And what I'm saying very firmly right here is that's 2 weeks too late. That's 2 more weeks that folks that have lived in these neighborhoods and on these streets and across from these properties and next to these properties have had to look at for years and years and years. And now we're finally ready to act, and we're just going to say no. Let's hold off some more. I said it several years ago, and in the article, for so long we looked at these properties and said, how can we fix the worst things physically out there about the community? And when we made that switch in mindset and said, we can't continue to just throw money at fixing the worst, we've got to remove the worst so that we can improve the best attributes of the community in every neighborhood and every street, that's the progress that I think we need to make.
Anything else, Chris?
Nothing.
Awesome. Emma?
Are you sure?
Yes.
Figured we'd ask one more time. Thank you. I was expecting you to be here. I had like June in my mind all week, and then we kind of had that, oh, this is the last one moment. But thank you for everything that you've done. You really took what we asked and did more than we ever imagined, and you've moved the city forward in just a couple months, and it speaks to the quality of the leader that you are. So I appreciate it. I hope you enjoy retirement. I mean, I kind of do, Hope you would stay like 5 more years. Enjoy retirement.
Luke?
Thank you. I look around, Mike. I see you. I see Rodney back there. I see Scott. I see Steve. I see a lot of folks who were real quality people. I remember when Terry retired. I remember when Rick Katz retired. And people thinking, how are we going to replace those people? Not to say anything disparaging about them, but we did more than replace department heads. And the one thing that stands out more in my years in this city than anything does is the quality of the staff we have and the pride they have in doing what they do. And you are just the epitome of it all. And we all appreciate everything you've done, especially to get us through these last couple months. And again, before you came, we had a director of electricity, not utilities. And we found someone who could do it all. Thank you.
Joe?
We sure are gonna miss you. thank you. I mean, they've said a lot that I would have wanted to say, but in order to not get all teary-eyed, we really are going to miss you. You've done a fabulous job of bringing some glue back to the city, so thank you very much. I do have just two other things. Number one, last week and the week prior, I did a drug take-back along with Emily and the Health Department and Washington Goes Purple, and I highly encourage the elected officials of this body and the elected officials in the county commissioners and Senator Serafini, Delegate Quarterman. There is something about going around with the police officers and the firefighters in this community and getting the drugs off of the streets to make it safer. It makes the community feel better. And I highly commend you for, the efforts that you're placing just neighborhood by neighborhood and to make it just a safer place. So I think that it is well worth the hour and a half to 2 hours of your time to go around and talk with the police officers and the neighbors and just really get a feel for, what's in our neighborhoods. And to Kristen's comments, I think if we waited 11 years, then 2 more weeks is really not that big of a deal. So I think that it's okay for us to sometimes take a step back, and just like we did with the parking rates, we were gung-ho, and then we made a change when someone started to make a little noise. So it's okay for us, and I'm not saying that we're not going to move forward with that plan, but it's okay for us to listen and to postpone for 2 weeks. That's it.
But I want a majority to make that decision if that's the case. In the parking rates, there was a majority that said, yes, let's step back and reevaluate. So if there's a majority that wants to step back, I'm all for respecting that majority's decision to do so. But I haven't heard in the several weeks since we have directed staff to conduct that order to delay or postpone or refrain from doing so. So if there's a majority here that wants to do that, I mean, like I said, that's up to the majority. I'll respect that just like I did the parking rate discussion.
You done, Joe? Okay. All right. I have 2 things. First, I need to get Michael S. Flagler to come forward. And I know you didn't want this, but this is a plaque of Michael, recognition of service, Michael S. Interim City Administrator, January 17th, Director of Utilities, January 3rd, 2016, City Light Manager, January 12th, 2016, with gratitude and appreciation. Well, everybody said it all already when it comes to Mike's Blake. I will only add one additional thing. It was great to have his cell phone number in my cell phone, because every time I called him, he answered. So, and I appreciate that very much. As to Kristen's comments, I will say that I agree with them. 100% I agree with him.
Good Lord, it's gonna snow.
He has, listen, I have always agreed with the plan of strategic demolition on derelict properties, and I agree that, that absent some kind of a realistic plan on May 7th, that this building will come down on May the 9th. So I respect his position. and he's correct. And I will say that sometimes there's mitigating circumstances, and sometimes decisions are made at the highest levels of city government as quickly as possible. That has to be made. And with that, I want to thank Kristen for his diligence on derelict properties, because he has been one of the ones who have led this charge. So,
But it's
thank
not
you
me.
very much.
I'm not making this decision to remove this property.
I know
The
you.
elected body has.
But you are correct in the things that you said.
But nobody.
I'm just agreeing with
This
you.
body hasn't
You
said,
can't even take it when I agree
let's
with
go
you.
to May 7th. I haven't seen a show of hands from a majority of this body that said, let's delay this to May 7th and have individuals in here to represent some alternative plan for it. If the majority wants to do that, I'm fine with that. But the majority of this body has made a decision, and that's the decision we respect to move forward with.
Okay, so, speaking of moving forward, the approval of the minutes, please.
Mr. Mayor, I hereby move for approval of the minutes of March 5, 12, 19, 26, all of 2019.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Consent agenda?
Mr. Mayor, hereby move that all the consent agenda be approved as presented.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Approval of an ordinance to increase water rates.
Mr. Mayor, I hereby move for the approval of an ordinance to increase the unit cost of water rates by 3% per year for inside city customers and 3% per year for customers outside of the city over the next 5 fiscal years. These rate increases are necessary to meet the revenue requirements of the water fund in order to keep the fund self-supporting as determined by the recently completed cost of service study prepared for the city by the Municipal Financial Services Group. The detailed individual rate changes in the volume charges and fixed charges by meter size are indicated by fiscal year in the body of the ordinance. The increased rate shall be effective for all bills rendered on or after July 1st, 2019, and for all bills rendered on or after July 1st of each of the subsequent 4 fiscal years.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Approval of an ordinance to increase sewer rates.
Mr. Mayor, I hereby move for approval of an ordinance to increase the unit cost of sewer rates by 2% per year for inside city customers and 2% per year for customers outside the city over the next 5 fiscal years. These rate increases are necessary to meet the revenue requirements of the sewer fund in order to keep the fund self-supporting as determined by the recently completed cost of service study prepared for the city by the Municipal Financial Services Group. The detailed individual rate changes in the volume charges and fixed charges by meter size are indicated by fiscal year in the body of the ordinance. The increased rates shall be effective for all bills rendered on or after July 1st, 2019, and for all bills rendered on or after July 1st of each of the subsequent 4 fiscal years.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Introduction of an ordinance, land management code.
Mr. Mayor, hereby move mayor and city council introduce an ordinance to amend chapter 140 land management code of the city code. This ordinance itemizes a package of amendments covering a wide range of revisions which began review by the planning commission in 2018. The complete details are outlined in the attached ordinance. This amended and revised version of land management code shall be known as version 3.5.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Revising parking facilities,
Mr.
rates and
Mayor,
fees.
we have one negative.
Oh, you're opposed? Okay. All right. 4-1. Revising parking facilities, rates and fees.
Mr. Mayor, I hereby move for mayor and council approval of a resolution approving specific revisions to the schedule of parking facilities, rates, and fees effective July 1st, 2019, or as herein noted per the schedule. This motion applies to bulk discount parking rates only. Any rate not specifically addressed in the attached resolution will be as approved in Resolution R-18-27, passed on June 26, 2018, and Resolution R-19-01, passed on January 31st, 2019.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Please speak up when I ask that. Approval of resolution addendum to development agreement for 140 West Antietam Street Student Housing Project.
Mr. Mayor, I hereby move for mayor and city council to approve a resolution authorizing an addendum to the development agreement for the student housing project at 140 West Antietam Street. The addendum acknowledges an increase in rent for the student apartments is agreed upon by USMH and the project developer, Randall S. Simpson Living Trust. The city's obligations documented in the original development agreement with USMH and Randall S. Simpson Living Trust will remain unchanged.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Approval of resolution for a purchase of service agreement for holiday lights on City Park Lake.
Mr. Mayor, I hereby move the approval of a resolution authorizing the execution of a purchase and service agreement with Les Spade for holiday lights on the City Park Lake. This agreement authorizes the purchase and installation of 5 floating tree dynamic light displays beginning with the 2019 holiday season. I further authorize staff to relocate the silhouettes replaced by the new lights to locations along Key Street and Highland Avenue / City Park Drive.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Approval of resolution, the waiver and release of reversionary interest agreement for 967 Sweeney Drive.
Mr. Mayor, hereby move for the mayor and council approval of a resolution authorizing waiver and release of revisionary interest agreement for 967 Sweeney Drive, known as Lot 6 of Hagerstown Business Park. There's no monetary consideration associated with this.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Approval
No.
of no? 4-1. Donna? Approval of resolution, grant agreement for fiscal year 2019 Strategic Demolition Fund, award totaling $500,000 for the urban improvement project.
Mr. Mayor, I hereby move that the mayor and city council approve a resolution to authorize entering into the attached grant agreement with the Maryland Department of Housing and Community Development for FY19 Strategic Demolition Fund award of $500,000 for the Maryland Theater portion of the urban improvement project.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? 5-0. Approval resolution, subrecipient agreement with Maryland Theater for fiscal year 2019 Strategic Demolition Fund award totaling $500,000 for the urban improvement project.
Mr. Mayor, I hereby move that the mayor and city council approve a resolution entering into the attached subrecipient agreement with the Maryland Theater to pass through the FY19 SDF funding award of $500,000 for the expansion project.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? 5-0. Approval of resolution, grant agreement for fiscal year 2019 Community Legacy Fund award totaling $420,000 for the urban improvement project.
Mr. Mayor, I hereby move that the mayor and city council approve a resolution to authorize entering into the attached grant agreement with the Maryland Department of Housing and Community Development for the FY19 Community Legacy Fund award of $420,000 for the UIP Plaza project and the First Hose Company Historic Preservation Project.
Second.
Discussion? In favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Approval resolution, subrecipient agreement for fiscal year 2019 Community Legacy Fund award for First Hose Company.
Mr. Mayor, I hereby move that the mayor and city council approve a resolution to authorize entering into the attached subrecipient agreement with the First Hose Company to pass through $20,000 of state community legacy grant funding for historic preservation rehabilitation activities at the First Hose property.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Approval of on-call electrical maintenance service contract, 7/1/19 and 6/30/20.
Mr. Mayor, I hereby move for mayor and council to authorize and approve the renewal of the on-call electrical maintenance contract for the contract term of July 1, 2019 through June 30, 2020. This is a year one of 5 optional one-year renewals. MEC Incorporated's pricing is as follows: regular hourly rate 8 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. Monday through Friday, $55 per hour. After-hours rate Monday through Friday, $82.50 per hour. Weekend rate, $82.50 per hour. Holiday rate, $110 per hour, and material markup on supplies, 10%.
Second.
Discussion? I most definitely am in the wrong business. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Approval on-call plumbing service contract 5/1/19 to 4/30/20.
Mr. Mayor, I hereby move for the mayor and council to authorize and approve Beaver Mechanical Contractors Incorporated as the City of Hagerstown's on-call plumbing contractor for various buildings/facilities within the City of Hagerstown on an as-needed basis for projects under $25,000. The departments that will be utilizing these services are as follows: Parks, Public Works, Utilities, Wastewater and Water, Fire, and Police. These services were offered through bid proposal in April 2019, proposal P1684.19. Beaver Mechanical Contractors Incorporated was awarded the bid. Contract term is from May 1, 2019 through April 30th, 2020, with the possibility of up to 5 additional consecutive one-year extensions, subject to the mutual consent of the City of Hagerstown and Beaver Mechanical Contractors Incorporated. Beaver Mechanical Contractors Incorporated pricing is as follows: plumber regular hourly rate 7 a.m. to 3:30 p.m. Monday through Friday, $42.50 per hour. Laborer regular hourly rate 7 a.m. to 3:30 p.m. Monday through Friday, $37 per hour. After hours rate Monday through Friday, evenings and Saturday, $63.75 per hour. Weekend rate Sunday, $85 per hour. Holiday rate $112 per hour. And the material markup on supplies, 25%.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Permission for the Director of Utilities to lock in wholesale power supply pricing.
Mr. Mayor, hereby move the mayor and city council grant permission to the Director of Utilities to lock in megawatt hour pricing for the wholesale power supply contracts or amendments to the contract due to the short duration electric market pricing is offered. The mayor and city council shall approve the wholesale power supply contract or amendment which will contain all terms and provisions, including the aforementioned pricing.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Approval of an open container exemptions for the Maryland Theater.
Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead.
I hereby move that the mayor and council approve an exemption from the City of Hagerstown open containers regulation under Section 173-6 of the Code of the City of Hagerstown for the Maryland Theater at University Plaza on June 7th, 14th, 21st, and 28th, 2019.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Approval of open container exemptions for the Hagerstown, Washington County Convention Visitors Bureau.
Mr. Mayor, I hereby move that mayor and council approve an exemption from the City of Hagerstown's open containers regulation under Section 173-6 of the Code of the City of Hagerstown for the Hagerstown, Washington County Convention and Visitors Bureau at University Plaza on June 23rd, 2019.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Approval of open container exemptions for Community Education Foundation.
Mr. Mayor, I hereby move that mayor and council approve exemptions from the City of Hagerstown's open containers regulation under Section 173-6 of the Code of the City of Hagerstown for the Community Education Foundation at University Plaza on August 3rd, 2019.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And the approval of city administrator's employment agreement.
Mr. Mayor, I hereby move for mayor and council approval of a 4-year employment agreement as attached with Scott A. Nicewarner to serve as city administrator. The term of this contract is May 6, 2019 through May 5, 2023.
Second.
Discussion?
I just want to say, we keep joking with Mike about not retiring, but Scott, we are very, very excited to have you. Thank you for accepting the position, and now you get to answer the mayor's calls, so aren't you lucky?
Well, the good thing is he already does.
Congratulations, Scott.
Looking forward to it, Scott.
Anybody else? Congratulations. All in favor?
Aye.
Carries. With that, we're adjourned.